Alright, it is 9 o'clock. That means it is time to get started. I wasn't here last night. I was taking the night off for a much needed break after Final Fantasy VII Remake was done. But that said, I still streamed on Monday. It was just, in the early hours of the morning. A little bit before, we didn't finish FF7 Remake till a little bit before 2 a.m. I think I finished it at like quarter to 2. And at that point, my brain was completely fried, so I hadn't really had a chance to unpack my overall feelings on it, other than what I had during the credits. But overall, I would say that I really liked it. I thought it was excellent. I have some issues with, all of the slow walk segments, the shimmying through things. That happens a lot in modern games, and I'm not really a fan of that. There's only one dungeon that I really didn't like, and that was the second time you go through the sewers. I wasn't a big fan of that part at all. I didn't really think it was super necessary. I think I would have preferred them sticking a little closer to the original there, and having you get stuff from the weapons shop and all that, and using a bunch of junk and various other devices and planes and nonsense that fell as a means to scale up instead of the very convenient grapple guns. But I get why they did that. I just think like that's the one part that I felt needed to be a little closer to the original rather than farther away. It's not that the chapter actually climbing the plate was bad. It was pretty good, and I really liked the boss there. Though the part where you have to run from it was not so good, because it was so tight with the timing getting past the Valkyrie's bullets. It was a bit of a pain. But that also it also made me think a little bit about how many of the weird little mini-games from FF7, the original, made it into the remake, even though it was just part 1. So that part with the Valkyrie and all the bullets was basically the part that's normally in the Shinra building, where you have to sneak past the guards on like floor 61. And first Cloud has to sneak by, and then he's got to signal Tifa and Barrett to get them past the guards as well. That's essentially what that was. And it got me thinking, how many of the other minigames are stuck in there as well? And I realized that the valve bit in the sewers the first time you're there is basically the CPR minigame from Junin, which was, heaven help me, I don't know why they put that in. They just did, I guess, so that you would have to directly do the saving of Priscilla. But yeah, like that's basically what that was. I'm like, oh, that's very sneaky. They even had the date mechanics in the game, with the hidden affection values that decide who you go with for the gold saucer. That was in the game as well. I learned actually today that there were 3 scenes the night you spend at Aerith's house before going to climb the plate. And I got the Tifa one, which I thought was really good. Cloud learns that it's good to care. And I think that's an important growth for him. But I watched the other 2 on the internet, and I really liked Barrett's, and I thought Aerith's was kind of strange. It was nice, but it was a little weird. Not really sure what that one was. Like 2 of them are definitely like real things that happen. The Tifa and the Barrett one are real. But I wonder if the Aerith one really was just a dream, or what was it? I don't know. But yeah, it was really good. I think the boss fights and the soundtrack were really the highlight. Oh, sorry. The boss fights, the soundtrack, and the character writing, especially for the main party. I thought all of those things were done excellently. Uh, Overall, I think the changes were very well handled, except for, and I guess it's not technically a change because it was undone 2 seconds later, but I did not like the bit where they had Sephiroth kill Barret, only to revive him one boss fight later. I thought that was a cheap shock value kind of thing, and I don't think they should have done it. I don't. I mean, no harm in the end since he came back, but I just don't like that. That's the one thing that felt like a real cheap shot. Now, if they had killed him off and like actually kept Barret dead, that would have been wildly fascinating, and things would have gotten like. So I knew people were complaining about the ending of the game, and when Sephiroth stabbed Barret, I thought, oh, there it is. That's why they're mad. They killed Barret. That's fantastically bold. But then they brought him back and just like, oh, well, they were just being cruel for no reason. I liked how the game managed to make Avalanche, people you care about, so that you're really mad, when they eventually die off. Well, or did they? That was an interesting thing from the ending of Biggs apparently surviving. I mean, if Biggs somehow survived when he died right in front of you, then maybe Jesse did too, who also died right in front of you. Who knows? After thinking about the ending, it took me a while to realize, what does the ending actually mean? And I think the ending of the game is essentially just a warning to the people playing. Hey, we stuck really close to the original for basically everything in this first game. But from here on out, anything can happen. And I think that's essentially the meaning of the ending, and the whispers being defeated and all that, is that, you have cut the chains of fate. We're no longer tied down to the way FF7 goes. Aerith's game facts knowledge is not going to be 100% accurate in the future. And I think the biggest changes we're going to see are with Wutai. I don't think that's going to be relegated to side quests anymore, like it was in the original game. I think that is going to be a major plot arc in the next game. And part of why I think they're doing that is to make Yuffie make sense. Because quite frankly, she doesn't make sense. She's a completely optional character that you may or may not ever get, and you may or may not ever go to Wutai or do any of the things there. But I think they are setting up to make Wutai like an actual important thing that you do have to care about in the next game, so that the introduction of Yuffie makes sense. And I'm also thinking they might do something like here's my other crazy theory. I think they might split the party in part 2 and have kind of 2 parallel paths. And what I would think is that you might have Barret with a group who goes off and does all the Shinra Avalanche related things. Tries to clear Avalanche's name, that sort of stuff. Maybe tries to prevent another war with Wutai, and that's how they hook up with Yuffie and the like. So I'm thinking you might get something like, okay, the whole party goes up through the Mithril Caves, and then Barret and his team go to Fort Condor, whereas Cloud and his team go to Junon. And, maybe they switch back and forth between the two, that sort of thing, instead of having a system where you have to, because one of the things that made the 7 remake work so well is that they designed all of the encounters, and in particular the boss fights, around the party that you have at that time. And the only time in the game where you really have those kind of restrictions in play is the Midgar section. Like, the game always decides who's going to be in your party up until the Shinra building part. And at that point, Actually, no, yeah, I think it still decides who your party is at that point, because they have, yeah, so after the Hojo fight with the specimens, you wind up in the jail, and then when you bust out and do the thing with President Shinra, and a lot of stuff changed in that scene in particular. They cut down on a lot of like the blood and the like. So in the original, Sephiroth had just killed everybody, or the piece of Genova that was currently masquerading as Sephiroth. Just kill everybody. The halls are stained with blood. Nowadays, that would get your rating increased significantly. So I understand why they took that out and just replaced it with like the trail of slime Genova leaves behind. And obviously there's no corpses or blood everywhere. And they changed what happened with President Shinra as well. It's kind of iconic when you find him in the original game. He's sitting there, slumped over in his desk with the Masamune sticking out of his back. And they took that scene out, but he still gets it anyway. He's just not there when you get there. He's out on the roof. So presumably what happened is the clone that was carrying Genova just chucked him out the window. I mean, that's the impression I got from the scene, is that he was just chucked out of the window and holding on for dear life while Genova escaped. And then he only winds up dying later once once Genova comes back. Or a piece of Genova. Who knows how much of it was. I love the Genova fight, by the way. I thought that was excellent. Especially in the third part of it, when the starts kicking in. That was so good. Yeah, that is my theory for the second part of the game, is that they will split the party. Instead of having everybody go everywhere, they'll divide it up so that they can create the same kind of set pieces and fights that they did in the first game. So my theory is they'll have Barret and Barret and who? Definitely Barret and Red. I think they're gonna have Barret and Red do the Wutai stuff and meet up with Yuffie. Kind of make them a 3-person team, and then have Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa do the other stuff. And they'd likely meet up in Cosmo Canyon. That's my theory, though. And I'm sure it'll be wrong, but it's okay, because nobody will remember in 2 or 3 years, when the game actually comes out, that I said any of this. So yeah, that about wraps up my thoughts on FF7 Remake. I really liked it. I love the variety of strategies you need to use to beat things. I love how they expanded. Yeah, I forgot to talk about this. There were some parts that they expanded from the original that were 1 or 2 screens, and they expanded them into entire parts. Like the train graveyard section I thought was excellent. I really liked underneath the plate, shutting off the lamps and that sort of thing. It was a good time. But the bosses were the highlight in terms of gameplay. Okay, now I'm done gushing about FF7 Remake. So, we can move on to tonight's main event.